Hey everyone, this is Lori Barnes back with another video for you on the Taurus full moon coming up this Friday. The upcoming Taurus full moon is going to be on Friday, November 15th. Depending on where you live, it will peak at different times. If you're on the west coast of the US, it'll be at 1:28 p.m. in the afternoon. On the east coast, 4:28 p.m. in the afternoon. And if you're in Rome, Italy, where I am broadcasting out of, it'll be at 10:28 p.m. We'll actually be able to see that big, beautiful moon in the sky. The full moon is at 24 degrees of Taurus. When we have a full moon, it always means that the sun and moon are in opposition. So that brings in Taurus, where the moon is, and Scorpio, where the sun is. Taking a look at Taurus first, Taurus is a sign that is known for being down to earth, practical, steady, stable, and enjoys the comforts of life, the things that stimulate the five senses. So touch, and smell, and sight, things of beauty. Taurus is known as a fertile sign. Of course, the creativity that comes out of that and patience. And the color of Taurus are the earth tones. I'm wearing the earth tones today in honor of Taurus. As an earth sign, we have Taurus is the fixed earth sign. So that brings more stability and reliability, more discipline, and also sensuality because it's earth, it's touch, it's the tangible things, and we are tangible things. Taurus is known to be hardworking and has a lot of endurance. It helps to maintain the course. And that, of course, goes with its fixed modality. So Taurus is very determined, loyal, persistent, steadfast. These are all words that are associated with Taurus. Taurus is consistent and you could say methodical. Now, some of the challenges or shadow side that comes with Taurus is to be stubborn. That's probably one of the things that Taurus is most known for, but it has all those other beautiful keywords that I mentioned. Every sign has its shadow side. So there's the stubborn side, there's materialistic proclivities for Taurus. They like to collect things, and especially things that are beautiful. They can sometimes be possessive, inflexible, and indulgent. There is a resistance to change with all of the fixed signs and a slowness to adapting, and maybe not so flexible, and sometimes they can be overly cautious. If we were looking at the expression of Taurus, kind of like distilling it down to its essence, Taurus is about being resourceful and getting productive results. Some of the archetypes that go with Taurus are the builder, the laborer, the art collector, the foodie, the provider, earth lover, and sensualist. The symbol of Taurus, of course, is the bull. The bull is grounded, and you could say it's a creature of earth. So that really helps understand the sign of Taurus when we think about the bull. The bull is known to be very strong and have a lot of strength. It's also patient and steady. They move at their own pace. Bulls do tend to prefer a peaceful surrounding, even though what we probably think more of as the bullfights where they try to make them angry, but they do tend to prefer a peace surrounding. What living thing doesn't really tend to prefer peace? The bull can be stubborn but resilient, and that's very much like what the Taurus sign expresses. On the other side, we have the sun. The sun, of course, shines its light on the moon, and then we see the fullness of the moon shining down onto Earth. So when we see that full moon, we have to consider the sign of the sun because that's where the moon is getting its light. We are currently in Scorpio season as the sun travels through the sign of Scorpio. Some of the Scorpio keywords are emotional intensity, depth, peeling back the layers to get to the center. Scorpio is very much about trust and loyalty. They like to probe and go deeply into things. They can be very strong-willed and they have great instincts. Some of the shadow side of Scorpio is to be too intense, maybe a bit secretive. There can be some jealousy. They like to push buttons as they're peeling back those layers, and that can sometimes have a destructive effect. Scorpios can also go a little too far with trying to get to the truth, trying to find that center, and it can be somewhat overpowering. Scorpio is of the water element, which operates on emotion, intuition, and connection. Scorpio is also a fixed sign, so we have a lot of fixed energy at the full moon. Scorpio is also very determined and resilient and stubborn and resistant to change, like the other fixed signs. The underlying need of Scorpio and its expression is to have a deep involvement and to participate in intense transformations or regeneration. Some of the archetypes of Scorpio are the transformer, the detective, the researcher, the inquisitor, and the intense lover. So when we have a full moon in Scorpio or Taurus, like we have the Taurus full moon this week, it's about that axis between Scorpio and Taurus. And what it's calling our attention to is the axis between practicality and depth work. So kind of like, staying on the practical level and looking at the facts and being methodical and tangible versus looking deeper into those things, going under it, getting to the root. So you have depth on one hand, which is Scorpio, and you have that practicality on the other hand, which is Taurus. So the vibe of this upcoming full moon, like pretty much every moon phase, has other planets doing other things that impact the vibe. So every Taurus full moon is going to be a bit different depending on what other things are going on in the sky. This is a look at the vibe, and then what we'll do is go into each of the aspects and understand it from the astrological chart. But first, we're just going to look at the vibe. We have energy that's reflective and grounded. That's the Taurus full moon, that earth element, and Saturn is also going direct. So it's making a pretty heavy imprint at the time of the full moon. In fact, Saturn goes direct just a few hours before the full moon. This brings into the pictures boundaries and structure. This is a very Saturn type of expression. We also have Mercury already in its pre-shadow phase, getting ready to go retrograde. That has us already starting to look backwards, to start revisiting and refocusing our goals, to prepare for the upcoming Mercury retrograde. That reflection time has already started. And then there's balancing stability with depth. These are those two signs, Scorpio and Taurus, where we have that practicality and the depth work that goes with it. And both of those things may be on our minds as we're going into the full moon. Practically what's going on, and then what's really driving what's going on, looking underneath that. It's a good time to reflect, ground, and evolve. These are good keywords for this upcoming full moon. What I really want to highlight is rigidity and flexibility, I guess you could say, because it's such a fixed full moon. One thing that you want to look at within yourself is, how do you approach change? Clearly, change is upon us. Just look at the news. There's a lot of change going on. There may be change going on in your personal life, or you may feel that the change going on in your personal life has to do with what's going on out there in the larger world. However, it's showing up for you. Change is happening. That's shown in the full moon chart because Uranus is right there with the moon. I'm going to show you the chart and you'll see Uranus and the moon are right together. So it'll be a very different experience of this full moon, depending on how you embrace change, or maybe you don't embrace change at all. So that's really a question that I'm asking you. Are you more rigid like the Taurus or Scorpio, these fixed signs, or Leo and Aquarius? Those are the other two fixed signs, where you're really good at maintaining the course and kind of getting into a routine or a habit and sticking with it. You can make things happen. You can be very productive. There's great things that come with the fixed signs. However, being super adaptable and flexible, that's not usually the way that the fixed signs respond to change. There's more of a tendency to stick the heels in the ground and say, no, I'm not changing, I'm not moving. That's going to be much more difficult than those of you who tend to be really flexible and adaptable to change. So that's the question. How do you embrace change? Are you more rigid and inflexible, or are you more adaptable? Because as we go into this full moon, it's going to help if you can take rigidity down, try to be more flexible, try to take more things in stride, allow yourself to kind of go with it, because if you fight against it, it can be a more difficult experience. With that moon conjunct Uranus, this is a time where you can break free from old habits. This theme comes up every time we have a lot of fixed energy happening. Earlier in the year, I remember that I've talked a lot about the fixed energy, and of course it comes and goes, but we're coming into another full moon where fixed energy is highlighted. So it is a time, if you've been wanting to make a change, maybe you've been wanting to cut coffee out or eat less chocolate or eat more healthy, something that you want to break an old habit, this is a good time to start that process And then during the Mercury retrograde would be a time to get all that stuff into place, especially Mars retrograde. We're going to have Mars go retrograde too, starting December the 6th. Mars is about action and like what you do. So Mercury retrograde can be how you think about it and how you plan it and how you come up with strategies, like, all the mental stuff, followed by Mars, which is what you actually do. This full moon also has all three of the outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, making an aspect with the sun and the moon, the two lights. With Neptune, there is some sensitivity, maybe some increased intuition, and it's a harmonious aspect. The sun is trine Neptune, the moon is sextile Neptune. That also could make things appear differently than they actually are, because Neptune can sometimes bring in a bit of illusion and deception. But on the positive side, it can bring in mysticism and creativity, heighten your intuition, and help you to kind of tap into whatever it is that you tap into that helps bring creativity to you. Moving on to cautious optimism. Saturn is making contact with both Jupiter and Mercury. So Jupiter and Mercury are across from each other in an opposition, both of them square to Saturn. That's called a T-square. So you could say there's some cautious optimism there. So with Saturn and Jupiter working together, it's like you have a healthy dose of structure and discipline, and then a healthy dose of optimism and feeling that you can do anything. It's really great when these two planets work together because you have the brake and the gas pedal at the same time. Then Mercury's there as well, bringing in the ideas and the thoughts and the strategies to help with whatever comes out of what that looks like for you, which it's hard to say because it depends on what houses in your chart those planets are in. And I'm going to have a list of the houses and the topics for each house, so you can get a copy of your chart and look at it, and it's going to give you more information. And the last thing that I want to bring up as the vibe that's going on is that all three of the outer planets are going to change signs within a year of each other. Pluto is in its very last few days in Capricorn. It is going to go back into Aquarius, finally to stay, and it'll be there for a good 20 years. Next year, Neptune is going to move into Aries and Uranus is going to move into Gemini. So when we have all three of the outer planets changing signs around the same time, it really signifies a time of big change. And they're going from all three being in earth or water signs, with Neptune in Pisces, and then Pluto is in Capricorn and Uranus is in Taurus. So we have the earth signs and the one water sign. They're all going to move into the more proactive signs. So we have half of the signs are more receptive, and they're the earth and water signs, and then the other half are more proactive, and they're the fire and air signs. So all three of these outer planets are moving into air or fire signs. This is a big deal, and we're already getting into it with Pluto moving into Aquarius soon. This is kind of looking at more of a backdrop type of vibe, because this is happening over a very long period of time, and we won't even see Uranus or Neptune move until next year. But just kind of like thinking ahead, this change that's on the horizon, and we see change happening all over. So remember, am I more flexible towards change, or am I more rigid towards change? Think about that as we go into this full moon weekend. So what can you do? Here's some ideas for you to work with the Taurus full moon energy flow. The first thing is to create a meal. So I'm saying create on purpose because Taurus is a creative sign. Now, if you don't have time to create, design the recipe and find the ingredients and all that, you can buy something, absolutely. But the idea is to have intention behind making a meal that really indulges your senses. Taurus is about the senses. It's about the pleasing of the senses. So find something that brings comfort. We say there's comfort food, and also tastes really good. So that's one idea for you. Second idea, step outside your usual routine in a way that feels liberating and fun. That's coming from that Moon-Uranus conjunction. There's a bit of restless energy that comes with that conjunction of Uranus to the moon. So if you try to do that energy, it helps absorb it up, and then you don't experience it maybe from the outside in a way that it's less pleasant. So make this energy work for you. Do the energy. Think of something that's not what you usually do. Maybe there's something you've been wanting to do that you've never done before. Well, this weekend could be a good time to try that out. And then the third thing is to spend time in nature, ground and reconnect with Mother Earth. Taurus is of the earth element. Get your feet on the ground. If you can take off your shoes and your socks and actually touch your feet to the earth, whether it's dirt on your front lawn, or if you can go to the beach and get your feet into sand, it doesn't really matter. It's just connecting reconnecting with nature. Hug a tree. Those are some ideas for you. I hope you enjoy that. Okay, now let's look at the actual chart and some of these aspects. There's the sun and the moon opposition, and you see Uranus right there next to the moon. This opposition between the sun and the moon is always going to bring up the concept between material security and that desire for emotional depth and personal evolution. When on the Scorpio side, where the sun is, the Scorpio is always getting underneath and trying to go deeper and deeper and understand more, get down to that core. Now, Uranus is there as well. Uranus with the moon, there could be like a shakeup. That's where I'm referring to when I'm talking about releasing some old habits, breaking free of something. Let go of things that maybe you're holding on to too tightly. You usually can become aware of it when you're trying so hard to hold on to it and you just feel like everything's trying to break you apart from that thing. That's a good sign. If you're holding on tightly and you're like, no, but whatever it is trying to cut it off. Maybe it's at work and something is going to shift to someone else, or maybe in a relationship, there's something is changing and you're like, no, this is a time to try to embrace it. I'm not saying it will be comfortable or easy, but if something that looks like it's going to change and you can't stop it, trying to rigidly hold on to it and trying to stop it when you can't, that's just going to prolong it. It's going to just make it more unpleasant. So it's better if you can find a way for yourself to work through that. With the moon conjunct Uranus, the sun is always across the way, meaning sun is opposite the moon and Uranus. So with the sun opposite Uranus, how am I maintaining my independence and my freedom? And with the sun, it's about our guiding principle in life. Wherever our sun is, we tend to gravitate towards that, not just the sign that the sun is in, but the house that the sun occupies in your chart. When you look at the topics associated with that, it gives you a lot of information about where you tend to be drawn to, where you gravitate towards in life. So with the Uranus across the way, there can be some unexpected insights that come in, or once again, this prompting to let us go of rigid structures we have in our life and open ourselves up to new paths. That's what Uranus does. It brings unexpected change for the better or for the worse. It's not one or the other. It just depends on your life, your situation. Your chart can give a lot of information about that. Now here we talk about the Pluto and the Neptune aspects with the sun and the moon. All three of these outer planets are making connections with the sun and the moon. So it's quite an interesting lineup we have at the full moon. There can be more introspection with the sun and the moon making a harmonious aspect with Pluto. So sun is sextile Pluto, the moon is trine. We can also find that there may be some underlying things that come up for us. So it's Scorpio sun in aspect with Pluto in a harmonious aspect, which means it's easier for those planets to exchange energy. So there can be a lot of inner work and depth that you find you can work on this weekend. And Neptune is going to bring in a touch of compassion and some intuition. I would say trust your instincts. That would be a good thing to do with this Neptune connection to the sun and the moon. The Mercury retrograde cycle has already started. We are currently in the pre-shadow phase. The pre-shadow phase began on November the 7th, and Mercury is going to go retrograde on November 25th or 26th, depending on where you live. It'll happen overnight. It will stay direct until December 16th when it goes direct, and that post-shadow Mercury retrograde cycle ends on January the 2nd, right after the new year. The travel of Mercury in its retrograde cycle is going to go from 22 Sagittarius back to 6 degrees of Sagittarius. Look at your chart, find Sagittarius, like what house Sagittarius occupies, and the topics and themes associated with that house are what's likely to come up for you during the Mercury retrograde. So what do we do with this Mercury retrograde? It's going to be in the sign of Sagittarius, which is a fire sign. So there can be some creative problem solving. Fire signs have this creative aspect to them. You can breathe new light into a stagnant project. I recommend avoiding new initiatives and new launches if you can. It's a perfect time to hit the pause button and reflect back over everything that you've done since the last Mercury retrograde. I do this every Mercury retrograde. I take this time period to go back and check what I've done so I can catch little things while they're still little and not let them get bigger and bigger and bigger. My keywords for Mercury retrograde: reflect, review, and realign. For this Mercury retrograde, well, every Mercury retrograde, I recommend to slow down. And in this case, I say simplify tasks. That way you can create more time in your schedule. This Mercury retrograde, slowing down and simplifying is important because we're going into the holiday season. Usually you have more commitments to family, more shopping to do, more holidays. It just seems to get more busy when we get into the holiday season. Even if you don't celebrate the holidays, many people do, and it does impact our schedule. It's a great time of the year to take more time off because other people are also taking more time off. And then you can kind of just slow down and really go deep into looking back on something. If you have a pet project, or you're writing a book, or you're developing a course, or you're getting ready to launch your business, there's a lot of work that goes into that. Taking pauses every 3 to 4 months to reflect and review everything that you've done so far can really help you. You're going to find little things, or you're going to improve things. You're going to take the time to go back over it once again with a fresh new eye, probably add to it, subtract, have new ideas. It's a really wonderful thing to do during Mercury retrograde. In Sagittarius, Sagittarius likes to have fun. It's a happy-go-lucky sign. It's interested in almost everything. It loves to live life for the experience of it. Do more things this holiday season that you actually enjoy. Do things that bring you joy. A caution, since we do often do a lot of shopping during holiday seasons, if you do celebrate the holidays and you purchase gifts, be careful not to make impulsive buys that you might regret later. And if you want to go deeper, find the Sagittarius house in your chart, and it's going to give you more information on the topics that will be activated for you. Mercury is active at the Taurus full moon. It's involved in a T-square with Saturn. So we have Mercury across from Jupiter. So this is like big ideas and practical applications. Jupiter is the big ideas, and Mercury is about thinking up the ideas and then practically figuring out a way to do whatever those ideas are. Interestingly, Mercury and Jupiter are in each other's signs, which is called mutual reception in astrology. So they're both giving each other their energy, but from the perspective of their opposite sign, right? So Mercury is the ruler of Gemini and is usually thinking about all the different strategies and ways to get things done and multitasking. Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, which is about the big picture, the philosophy underneath whatever that idea is, the belief system. They're exchanging energy, both of them in a square to Saturn, which is holding both of them to reality. It's grounding them. It's saying, okay, your belief system is over here and the ideas for how to do it over there. How are we going to practically bring these together and get things done? Mercury with Saturn can be disciplined communication. It can refine your ideas and help you pay attention to detail. Whereas Jupiter and Saturn, I spoke about that earlier. It's like the brake and the gas pedal working together. It's like having the big vision and also the responsible discipline and structure to get things done. So we have this T-square happening at the full moon. Saturn is stationing direct just before the Taurus full moon. Saturn has been retrograde since late June, and Saturn as the planet has themes of commitment, responsibility, structure, and discipline. When a planet changes signs, whether it's stationing to go retrograde or stationing to go direct, it seems like it's standing still. When it does that, it's like its influence just settles in that spot, right? Because it's not moving. Technically, in the sky, it's still moving. But what it appears like from planet Earth, where we are, it appears to stop and change directions. And that is a really potent time because of the speed of the planet. So Saturn is going to be very, very slow at the Taurus full moon, and that's going to amplify its influence. You're going to look to your Pisces house in your natal chart because that's where Saturn is. It's going to go direct at 12 degrees Pisces. So you want to look in your chart and see if you have any planet or point, your ascendant, descendant, midheaven, or nadir, or maybe your nodes. If you have any of those around 12 degrees of Pisces or any of the mutable signs. So the mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. If you have placements there, your chart is highly activated and you will likely feel this more strongly than others who don't have an activation in your chart. Saturn is about long-term vision and sustainable growth. So whatever themes are associated with the Pisces house in your chart, you can think about that long-term vision, sustainable growth, and what has maybe shifted a bit while Saturn is retrograde. Maybe you've been introspective about something that has to do with structure and your long-term vision since this retrograde started back in June. So you can reflect back to June on that one. And then I wanted to take a quick look at Venus because Venus rules Taurus. So Venus is the ruler of the Taurus full moon. Venus is lightly aspected at this full moon. Venus is at 4 degrees of Capricorn, and you can see most of the planets are further along in degree. It is tightly in conjunct to Mars, and depending on what system of astrology you follow, some use an in conjunct and some don't. Hellenistic wouldn't consider that an aspect at all, but they are in conjunct. Venus is applying to a sextile with Saturn, so she does have that. I wouldn't be able to say that she's not aspected at all, but I would say she's a bit lonely because her only aspect is with Saturn, which is somewhat cold when you think about relationships and, the warm and fuzzy kind of relationships. You're not usually thinking Saturn or Capricorn, the sign that Venus is traveling through. They are earth and water signs though, so there is that desire for touch, like human touch and connection. Venus is at the bends of the nodes. So that does bring karma and destiny and values all together, but it would really depend on your chart. I'm not going to go too far into detail on that because the nodes are a much larger topic to discuss. But I did want to note that Venus is at the bends, which means it's in a square position to both the north node and the south node. Summing that up, there could be some difficulty connecting with others. Venus is not well aspected or not very aspected, lightly aspected, you could say. So there may be a bit of a disconnect with others. It may be more difficult to relate and connect, and you'll have to put more effort in when relating or connecting with others. Mars is going into its retrograde cycle starting next month. And here are the dates, just so you have them for your calendar. We entered the pre-retrograde shadow on October 5th when Mars was at 17 degrees of Cancer. It will go retrograde on December 6th. It's going to start its retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo. As it goes backward by a degree, it's going to go back into Cancer on January the 6th. And it will go direct on February 24th when it retrogrades back to 17 degrees of Cancer. That's where its pre-retrograde shadow started. So it'll go direct February 24th of next year. And when Mars goes direct and reaches 6 degrees of Leo, that's where it originally went retrograde, it will be finished with its retrograde cycle. It will be finished with its post-shadow phase. During Mars retrograde, you may feel a difference in your physical energy, probably less energy. And it'll be a topic of Mars retrograde is how do you use your energy? What are your energy levels like? So the question is, where are you spread too thin? Where do you need to adjust your energy reserves? Are there things in your life or in your calendar that are taking too much of your energy or your time? And maybe you need to cut some of those things out. That would be a great way to use the Mars retrograde to really look at your life and see what activities, what things are physically keeping you from doing the most important things in your life. You'll want to look at your astrology chart, your natal chart, and find the signs Cancer and Leo. And those houses are going to give you more information on what topics and themes are likely to be activated for you personally. And just as an aside, Mars is very lightly aspected at the Taurus full moon as well. And that, I think, adds to that social disconnect that we might be feeling at the Taurus full moon. So in your chart, if you want to find all of the different planets where they are at the Taurus full moon, here they are. You're going to look to Taurus for the full moon in Uranus, Gemini for Jupiter, Leo for Mars, Scorpio for the Sun, Sagittarius for Mercury, Capricorn for Venus and Pluto, and Pisces for Saturn and Neptune. And if you don't have a copy of your chart, I have 2 different websites listed here where you can get your chart for free. Here is the list of astrology houses and the topics associated with them. So when you do have your chart in front of you and you're looking at the different signs and the planets that are in those signs that make up this Taurus full moon, you can refer here and you'll get more information on how this is going to impact your chart. And here's a quote for you for the Taurus full moon: adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience. And that is a very Taurus word. That's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will be back with another video for the Sagittarius new moon that's coming up on December the 1st at 9 degrees. You can schedule a consultation with me at my website, loribarnesastrology.com, and I would be happy to help explain to you where these energies are showing up in your chart. I'll see you next time. Ciao.